this is the most holy site in all of Christianity and the most important site for Christians.
I don't care if you are Jewish or Muslim or atheist. I could bring them to that oneness of being human.
For almost 700 years, the Franciscans have been watching over sacred sites in the Middle East, like this one, the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem.
We would certainly agree that this is the most holy site in all of Christianity and the most important site for Christians. In fact, since the very first century, we know that Christians were paying special attention to this particular site. So it's no wonder that many Christians come here. They want to see not just the way things were 2,000 years ago, but the way things are today, which is, how are we, with the risen Lord present among us, based upon what happened in this holy place. The Franciscans have been in the Holy Land in this area since 1217. And we know from archaeological evidence that they were on the Via Dolorosa by 1229. We know that Franciscans then have been here in the Basilica itself since 1309 or 10. And since the 1340s, we've had the formal commission from the Holy See to take care of the holy places here in the Holy Land. So for many centuries we've been living and praying in these particular places here. Obviously it involves the maintenance and upkeep of these places. In the past it has also involved Franciscans excavating various archaeological sites and discovering various places. It also means, much more important than all of this, it means that we here proclaim by our very presence the reality of Jesus risen from the dead. It's a very interesting thing to note that many people come here because this is the church of, they say, the Holy Sepulchre, the place where Jesus died, and they don't refer to the fact that he rose from the dead. It's not an offense to talk about the fact that he died, but it might be a challenge to talk about the reality that he's alive and risen from the dead. So by our presence and our prayers here, we're proclaiming that reality, that Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified here, buried here, is now alive. He rose from the dead.
Because it's the center of my belief, that Jesus really rose from the dead and he is risen and he is with us. This is always my favorite, the tomb of the Lord, although it's always noisy.
All these years I found peace with him. Coming to Jerusalem is a planned trip by myself. I didn't ask any help. I just asked the Lord, help me. It's definitely a blessed trip.
Well, our work, of course, in proclaiming the reality of Jesus risen from the dead takes many forms, because with Franciscans in many parts of this area, we have schools, we have parishes, we work with visiting pilgrims, we have institutes of education, we provide housing for Christians, so that through these various works we're proclaiming that reality and hopefully evangelizing those with whom we come in touch with so that they can allow the Holy Spirit and the risen Lord to enter into their lives.
Very important. We have respect for the feelings of believers of all faith.
Well, we know, for example, from archaeological discoveries that Christians were living in this area in tents before the year 135, which was the year that the Bar Kokhba revolt was put down by the Romans. At that time, in the year 135, the Emperor Hadrian tried to obliterate any signs of Jewish worship, and living over in Rome without Facebook and without cameras or anything like that, he could not distinguish between Jews and Christians. So, assuming in his eyes that this was a Jewish site, they filled in this area with landfill, and on top they built a pagan temple with a statue of Jupiter directly over the spot where Jesus' body laid, and this we know from archaeology. They hoped, or the Romans hoped, that at that time people would forget what was underneath by virtue of the fact that there was a pagan statue on top, whereas in fact it helped people to remember exactly where Jesus' body had laid, so that when the Empress Helen sent her engineers here, or came with them herself asking, where will I excavate to look for this holy place, they said, underneath that And they excavated there and found exactly what people said they would find.
I want to get in one thing. I want people to come here and say, God is the rock.
The Capernaum is the place where Jesus would have stayed for 3 years. It's a town, actually, of fishermen. And the Franciscans have excavated the synagogue from the 5th century and the house of St. Peter. We have the best archaeologists here. These Franciscans excavated the whole village of Nazareth, say, for example. The first Christians, when they were allowed to build churches and shrines, they would have mosaic floors with Christian symbols. Beautiful mosaics in the 5th century of a peacock, which is the symbol for the resurrection.
Where they are very, very important because in my experience guiding some of the groups, I can see their faith and their inspiration on these sites are very, very increased after the pilgrimage to the Holy Land. They can share with their families and with the community all that they are learning. Also, it's something for life because the next time they will hear on the masses the lectures on the gospel about these places, they're gonna be transported again in their minds, in their hearts to these places.
The place transformational. I have had people tell me my visit to the Holy Land changed my life. It certainly changes your perspective on a lot of things. I mean, you go to these places and you go to the top of Mount Tabor. I mean, I didn't want anybody to bother me. Don't talk to me. I just want to stand here for a couple of minutes and take all of this in. I mean, it does something to you. I have to say, it does something to you. I mean, change behaviors, I hope it would, but I hope some of that would, would rub off.
For me, Mount of Beatitudes is always a source of inspiration. The Beatitudes. It's a place of meditation for me about being poor, and the other Beatitudes, being meek and being a peacemaker. It impressed me all, the quietness of the place for meditation.
My name is Sister Mary Rose. I belong to the Franciscan Missionaries of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, called the Egyptians, because the congregation started in Egypt by the first Italian sister who went there on the request of the bishop for the girls' education.
Se sentó y sus discípulos se reunieron a su alrededor.
Talking about Mount Beatitudes, as I said, we've been here present 100 years. What is our work, our mission? Because it's not just a job, it's a mission. Okay, we have 2 pilgrim houses. So we have the pilgrims, they come here, they stay overnight or 2, whatever the program is. And we try to give them an advice, yes. And of course, whatever they need, we try to please them. They come and open, themselves with you, telling them their problems, to say a prayer for them, which is very, very nice, It's another way of evangelization. It's not going, outside and preach, but it's a very soft one. This is one of our mission. It's a very quiet mission. It doesn't make noise. That's always what I say. It's a very silent mission. We're kind of sharing, kind of growing, because when you hear the problems of others and leave everything in God's hands, it makes you stronger in what you believe, and even they are satisfied and they leave the place kind of, encouraged and also closer to the Lord, because they see that the Lord is present in different ways, but He never leaves us alone, so He's always there.
I consider this is the most beautiful place I ever have seen before. And I came here and I feel God so close to me. And today is, I consider, the most important day in my life, and I think it's also for all people who come over here.
They come from all over the world. They come from places that I ask, where are you coming from? They tell me the place. I tell you the truth, I don't know. Yes. And also, all kinds of religions come. Not only the Christians, not only the Catholics. There are believers, non-believers. There are other different religions come. Our doors are always open and we greet everybody. Good word to everybody, and then we let the Lord works. He knows what to do.
I'm not religious at all, but you know, the context is the meaning that other people give to the place, and you can see the people here treat this place as holy. So,
well, I think that I appreciate the reality that there is care for these communities. My concern would be that part of the care also is involved with the living community that is here. I think I'm deeply concerned with the Christian community that continues to, because of the variety of policies and the environment they find themselves in, is beginning to diminish. So some of these sites that are important for Christians to consider are finding themselves without living communities.
It's not just the shrines, those stones that people friars also take care of what we call living stones as well. In other words, the people who live there. I had the opportunity to go there a little over a year ago. I'd never been to the Holy Land, always wanted to go to the Holy Land. I'll be honest with you, we're not disappointed with the experience at all. I mean, I've heard people say going there is life-changing, and I'm not sure I changed my life, but I was certainly impressed by what I saw. Not only the holy places, made holy by the footsteps of Jesus, but also well, the other things that the friars were doing. I saw a school in Jericho, as active as any school you'd find here in the United States. I saw senior citizens in a complex in Bethlehem, of all places. We always associate Bethlehem with the infancy of Jesus. You know, here were senior citizens. I was thinking maybe I should get on the list, you know, get in there. We saw a drug treatment program at Top Mount Tabor. This is taking care of the living stones as well.
Don't be afraid. Come to the Holy Land. Come and see the Holy Land. No? There's always a pilgrimage. We're waiting for you here in the Holy Land. Encounter God, encounter Jesus, the Blessed Mother in this very place. The Gospels that you read in your churches will become alive when you come here. We are the administrators of these shrines. We prepare the shrines for you, we maintain the shrines, and we provide the altars where the priest can celebrate the Mass. We give a great deal of importance to these shrines. It is a place where you're welcome. For me, being here is a dream, and I'm happier here than anywhere else in the world. Maybe there may be tensions here, but I would never felt afraid to be here. There's a peace that I could not describe. I think God wants me to be here. I have friends who are Greek Orthodox. We don't care, you know, just we are Christians. And even so, I have befriended Muslims and Jews, Israelis, you know, even atheists. We have lots of atheists running around here. I said it makes no difference anymore. What's important is you care for them, all human beings. You know, we may be different, we may have different perspectives in religion or way of life. But here there's always that, you know, unity I could feel. You know, when you have a good heart, when you can show love, respect for the other, I think they also feel that one. I always think that we should be together. Yeah? We should be one, building bridges among the peoples. I don't care if you are Jewish or Muslim or atheist. You know, I could bring them to that oneness of being human.
Well, this Franciscan monastery of the Holy Land, we're located in northeast Washington, D.C., and I think the best way to describe it is it's like an outpost of the Holy Land. Not everybody can go to the Holy Land to see these places. Here, this gives you a little taste of the Holy Land, right in your own country, in your own backyard.
You got a dove up there in the window. Above the altar is another dove up here.
So many people come here and they have an experience, really, because of the shrines that are here and the altars that are here and the services that take place here. They have an experience, more or less replicating what they would experience in the Holy Land. Here we have a replica of the anointing stone that you would see if you were in the old city in Jerusalem. We have a replica of the tomb of Jesus. We have a replica of the shrine for the Ascension. We have a replica of Mary's tomb that the Crusaders built around the 14th century. Replicas of Bethlehem and replicas of Nazareth. You can go downstairs and see. It would put you in mind of, when you actually go to these places, what you see, the star in the ground, etc. But we have all these things here to kind of give people something to think about, rather than just simply imagining what it must look like. Here's a good idea. This is like one step removed from being in the Holy Land. We call it an oasis of peace, and it really is. You can come to these gardens, you can sit and just enjoy yourself, just relax, listen to the birds. People come and enjoy that. They bring their kids, and it's a nice respite for people. People find the church breathtaking. Here at the monastery, we have Christians of all kinds of stripes and persuasions coming here for various different things, some just to pray, some to take part in the services that are offered here. We have had Muslim and Jewish visitors here, and you go to the Holy Land, you see the same thing. You have Palestinian Christians, you have Palestinian Muslims, and you have Palestinian Jews. What holds them together? The Palestinians. And they all live in the Holy Land, and their families have been there for years. And I mean, it's incredible. It's not just for Christians only, and it's not just for any group. It's truly an international place. Well, you know, Francis was apparently a 12th century character. Francis apparently was the party boy of Assisi. His father was a member of the rising middle class. His father was a merchant, a cloth merchant. And somehow in the midst of all this, well, Francis went off to war, and it was not a good experience for him. Francis was taken prisoner, and there was nothing to read except the lives of the saints. And so he apparently had a major conversion in his life. And he started seeing things very, very differently, and started so differently that, talk about a conversion, he had a conversion, turned his life totally around. The pertinent issues of today, if we had listened to him and respected Mother Earth and respected the environment the way he was, because he would talk about brother sun, sister moon, brother wolf, what the heck is that about? You know what I mean? And because he saw himself really related to things. You know, I have a theory, unpublished, okay, until this point, where people say that, you know, all that Francis preached to birds, and he spoke to the wolf, and you know, he in other words, that Francis talked to nature. You know what I think? For what it's worth, I think nature spoke to him.
At least for the historical meaning, should be preserved, because otherwise we're just another place without the historical context.
Since St. Francis, they're here and they're watching over all these places. Because of them, we can still come to these places, which are very, very important to our faith.
Oh, I feel they're so important to keep. They got so much history here that it's very important.
Well, I said, you know, it's put a completely different light on. It's just made it all come to life. I mean, it's so much more able, or made it so much easier to understand. They've been here this long, let's keep it for future generations too.
When we gather in our churches in New York, when we gather in our churches in Ireland or in any part of the world to celebrate the Eucharist, we are truly present at the death and resurrection of Jesus. Through this, if we want to call it mime or liturgy, this action, we are made present at an event from the past. So our faith does not depend upon the reality of these locations. But since, if we can say, from the early 60s of the first century, these places here were getting special attention from Christians because of what had happened here, we can say that these particular sites here hold an emotional attraction and impact which is very understandable for Christians all over the world.